She didn't flinch. That was the thing that broke him open. Rain hammered the glass walls of the riverside penthouse in Seoul, turning the Han River into rivers of black and gold 12 floors below. Midnight pressed against the windows like something alive. He stood inside the entrance of a space designed to swallow powerful men whole, marble floors, dim pendant lights, the kind of silence only money could buy, and she moved through it like she owned her own gravity. Dark curls pinned behind her head. Gold jewelry warm against deep brown skin. A notebook tucked beneath her arm filled with words in 3 languages. She never looked down. Never flinched. She looked directly into his eyes while explaining security codes, like she couldn't feel the danger radiating off him, like she had no idea she was standing 3 feet away from a man whose name made Seoul's most powerful people go very, very quiet. He had not been looked at like a person in years. Welcome back to Sonnet Love Stories, my beautiful and amazing family. I'm so happy to have you here once again. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss any of our interesting stories. And please take a quick second to like this video, comment, and share it with someone who loves obsessive emotional stories. It really helps the channel grow and boosts our community. Now get comfortable, because today's story is intense. Let's dive right in. His name was Baek Do-hyun, 34 years old. Unmarried by design. Built with the kind of broad-shouldered frame that made rooms rearrange themselves around him, not because he demanded it, but because stillness that concentrated carried its own gravity. Sharp jawline. Dark eyes that processed everything and revealed nothing. Naturally fit in the way of someone whose body had simply adapted to years of controlled tension. Seoul's financial newspapers occasionally printed his name beside legitimate investment portfolios and real estate acquisition headlines. What they never printed, what nobody printed, was the other side of him. The underground investment networks. The private syndicates operating beneath the city's glittering surface. The whispered reputation that moved through elite dinner parties and closed-door political meetings like whether nobody wanted to name out loud. He had arrived at the penthouse alone because anonymity had become the only luxury left that he could actually trust. No convoy. No security detail crowding the elevator. No expensive watch visible beneath his sleeve. Just a man in a black coat carrying the exhaustion of someone who had controlled too many things for too long and was no longer certain what peace felt like. She introduced herself as Liana, property manager, currently based in Seoul after 18 months in Kyoto. Before that, Armenia. Before that, Ghana and Morocco. She said it without drama, the way people mention weather when weather is simply the texture of their life. Her voice carried traces of every city she'd passed through, warm without being performative, direct without being cold. When she moved through the suite pointing out thermostats and blackout panels, she touched surfaces with a kind of quiet respect, like she understood that spaces held memory and memory deserved care. He watched her hands. Long fingers. Ink stain on her left thumb from something she'd been writing. A small silver ring on her index finger with a symbol he didn't recognize but wanted to ask about. He didn't ask. He realized too late that she'd caught him staring. She didn't look away. Didn't perform embarrassment or false modesty. She simply held his gaze for one measured second, aware, unhurried, unafraid, and then continued explaining the apartment's coffee machine like the moment hadn't happened at all. That stillness of hers lodged itself somewhere beneath his ribs. He let her finish. Let her leave. Stood alone at the floor-to-ceiling windows after the door clicked shut and watched rain blur the city into something almost soft and told himself the feeling would pass by morning. It didn't pass by morning. 3 nights later, he returned from a private meeting that had stretched past dawn, the kind of meeting that left no paper trail and required him to shake hands he despised. He loosened his tie in the elevator, poured himself something dark and cold in the kitchen. Let the silence of the penthouse settle around him the way silence did when a person had been surrounded by controlled noise for too many consecutive hours. Then he noticed it. The book. Not on the nightstand where he'd left it. Not anywhere in the bedroom. Not on the coffee table or tucked into the side pocket of his travel bag. He searched twice, methodically, the way he approached every problem, without panic, without noise. But panic found him anyway. Quiet and devastating, like water through concrete. The book was old. Korean poetry, soft at the edges from years of handling. Not rare in any market sense. Worth nothing to anyone who didn't know what the handwriting inside the margins meant. His mother had filled those margins over decades, recipes beside borrowed verses, advice tucked into stanzas, small observations written in her particular slant between the printed lines. He'd read those notes so many times the ink had begun to fade in places, and still he read them. The book was the only object he carried everywhere. The only thing connecting him to the version of himself that had existed before power calcified around him like armor. He called the property number at 2 in the morning. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was quieter at this hour. Softer. Like she'd been awake working and had set something down to pick up the call. Before he could fully explain what he was looking for, she already knew. She had found it beneath the bedroom side table while preparing the suite for the following guest. She said she'd recognized immediately that it mattered, not from the book's appearance, but from how carefully the pages had been handled. The way something worn from love looked different from something worn from neglect. Most people would have left it with front reception. Most people would have shipped it through building staff. She had kept it beside her own belongings. That detail hit him somewhere he wasn't prepared for. They arranged to meet the following evening at a small café hidden inside an old alley near Ixionddong, the kind of place that existed just slightly outside the city's tourism circuits, where regulars came for the vinyl records drifting through the speakers and stayed for the espresso, and the way rain sounded different against the old tile roof. He arrived first. Dark jeans. Charcoal coat. No security. No performance. When she walked in, she was carrying the book against her chest with both arms, like she understood its weight without knowing its story. She sat across from him and apologized gently for the cover having been opened. She'd been trying to identify the owner, she explained, and she'd accidentally read one sentence written inside the margins. She quoted it quietly across the small table. "You should eat properly even when life becomes heavy." His mother's handwriting. His mother's voice. 5 words that had pulled him through years of things he had never told another human being. Hearing them in someone else's mouth, in her voice, in that warm, unhurried tone, cracked something open in him that he hadn't even known was sealed. He didn't speak for a moment. She immediately began to apologize again, reading his silence as discomfort, but he stopped her. "No," he said. Quietly. "Just that." She waited. "It's the first time I've heard someone else say them," he told her finally. She didn't push. Didn't manufacture sentiment around the admission. She simply nodded, like she understood that some things didn't need commentary to be honored. Their coffee stretched into nearly 4 hours. She spoke about her work the way people spoke about things they loved without needing external validation for loving them, with specificity and without performance. She documented disappearing cultures through photography and digital storytelling. Not for viral content. Not for follower metrics. For the kind of preservation that believed beauty deserved witnesses even when audiences were small. She showed him photographs stored on her camera, textile markets in Ghana, Armenian churches standing against mountain fog, tea houses in Kyoto, musicians in Istanbul playing to nearly empty streets at midnight. Every image was intimate rather than decorative. "Cities tell you the truth after midnight," she said at one point. "During the day, everyone's performing. At midnight, the performance gets too expensive to maintain." He thought about that. He thought about how long he had been performing. She asked him almost nothing personal. She didn't probe, didn't fish, didn't seem particularly impressed by his careful deflections or the controlled way he held himself. She talked to him like someone talking to a person rather than an opportunity, and the difference between those two things, a difference he had almost forgotten existed, settled over him like something he hadn't known he was missing until his body recognized it. He walked back to the penthouse afterward in the rain without calling a car. He let himself get wet. He stood at the window later and understood, clearly, precisely, without romantic delusion, that he was in significant trouble. The following week, he began quietly learning her routines. Not with surveillance infrastructure. He had the resources for that and deliberately chose not to use them, which told him something important about what this feeling was. He simply paid attention the way a man pays attention when someone has become interesting enough to eclipse everything else competing for his focus. He noticed she spent hours in old bookstores in Insadong rather than the luxury boutiques most people at her income level gravitated toward. He noticed she tipped street musicians before pretending she hadn't noticed them, slipping bills into open cases with the casual misdirection of someone who wanted to give without being thanked. He noticed she spent whole afternoons in artisan markets speaking to elderly craftsmen through broken Korean mixed with translation apps and hand gestures, genuinely fascinated rather than performing fascination. She was sincere. In a world he had spent over a decade moving through, a world built on strategic performance, controlled impressions, and alliances maintained through careful mutual deception, she was simply and thoroughly sincere. It made him restless in a way he had no previous vocabulary for. A week after the café, he found her at a lantern market tucked into a narrow Seoul alley where amber light spilled from hundreds of hand-hung paper frames across old stone walls. She stood at a handmade jewelry stall turning a silver ring between her fingers while soft jazz drifted from a bar 2 doors down. She recognized him immediately when he approached. The smile that crossed her face was small and real. No calculation behind it. No assessment of what knowing him might be worth. Just warmth, simple and direct, like someone genuinely pleased to see a person they'd been thinking about. He felt it land somewhere dangerous. Their conversation unfolded the way conversations did when two people were trying to be careful and failing, with easy laughter and accidental honesty and the growing awareness that something was moving between them faster than either of them had agreed to allow. She teased him for pretending to dislike crowds while clearly observing everyone around him. He pointed out that she emotionally attached herself to temporary places and then acted surprised when leaving hurt. She laughed at how seriously he drank cheap street coffee. "You hold it like it's a briefing document," she told him. "It tastes like one," he replied. She laughed again, full and unguarded, and he stored the sound somewhere private inside himself. When he finally asked if she wanted to have dinner, she declined. Genuinely, without game playing. Her week was consumed by interview schedules, editing deadlines, a cultural exhibition she'd committed to months earlier. She had a life full of obligations that belonged to her work and her movement, and her carefully maintained independence. He asked one question before she could fully redirect the conversation. "Then when does the world give me a chance?" She looked at him. Really looked, the way she had that first night in the penthouse, with that quiet awareness that saw without performing the act of seeing. "Next weekend," she said. He waited. And Seoul, for the first time in his memory, felt like a city worth waiting inside. Their first dinner happened on a Saturday when the temperature had dropped enough to put light snowfall onto dark pavement. They ate at a small restaurant in Bukshan that most people drove past without stopping. Old wooden interior, handwritten menu, the kind of food that tasted like someone's grandmother had developed the recipe over decades of adjustment. She ordered confidently. He noticed she asked the server about the origin of one ingredient with genuine curiosity rather than the performative foodie interest he usually encountered in people trying to impress him. Afterward, they walked. Not toward anywhere specific. Just through narrow streets where snow drifted against tiled rooftops and the city sounds softened under the weather. She spoke about the particular loneliness of luxury, how the most expensive places in the world were often the quietest, and how quiet, stripped of meaning, became its own kind of heaviness. He understood that more precisely than she could have known. He didn't tell her that. Not yet. But the restraint required cost him something. Over the following weeks, what existed between them refused to be categorized. Not officially defined. Not confessed aloud. But undeniable in the way some things were undeniable, in the particular tension that entered a room when they were both in it, in the way she'd reach for her coffee and he'd find himself tracking the movement like it mattered, in the way his phone felt different when her name appeared on the screen versus every other name in his contacts. She met him in jazz bars where conversation happened underneath music. In bookstores where she'd pull something from a shelf and read one paragraph aloud and then watch his face. In quiet corners of the city, she discovered through the restless curiosity that had always driven her movement. And he told her things. Small things carefully selected. Not the empire. Not the reputation. Not the weight that came with his actual name. But real things about the book, about his mother, about what it felt like to perform stability for so long that you forgot what genuine stillness was supposed to feel like. She listened without needing to fix anything. That, he was learning, was its own extraordinary rare thing. Then a man named Park Sung-jin appeared. He was a cultural consultant connected to the exhibition Liana had been photographing, educated, easy with charm, fluent in 4 languages, the kind of person who collected interesting women the way some people collected art, with enthusiasm and without particular intention toward the future. Do-hyun had encountered the type across every social circle he'd ever moved through. He recognized it immediately. What he hadn't anticipated was how quickly Sung-jin recognized Liana as someone worth pursuing. Do-hyun arrived at the exhibition opening on a Thursday evening uninvited, in the sense that the invitation had been extended to him as a donor to the Cultural Foundation rather than as someone attending to see a specific woman, and found Liana across the gallery space in a deep burgundy dress, her natural hair framing her face, deep brown skin catching the gallery light in a way that made her look like something a painter had attempted and nearly gotten right. She was speaking to a small group near one of her photographs, animated and precise, her hands moving as she explained the context of an image taken in Marrakesh. Sung-jin stood beside her. Too close. Not inappropriately close in any technical sense, but close in the deliberate way of someone who had already decided this woman was interesting and was beginning the slow process of making her aware of it. Do-hyun crossed the gallery. He did not hurry. He never hurried. But something in his expression shifted, a compression around the jaw, a quality in his eyes that people who knew him well would have recognized as the moment before he made a decision that would be very difficult to reverse. He greeted Liana first. She turned, and the surprise on her face became something warmer within the space of a breath, a softening that she couldn't entirely contain, and that she clearly noticed she couldn't contain. Because she glanced away briefly in the way people did when they were managing something internal. He stood beside her. And Sung-jin, to his credit, was perceptive enough to read the geography of the moment. He excused himself within 4 minutes. Quick pause. If this story has you hooked, tap like and drop your thoughts below. Now, back to the story. After the gallery, they walked to a late-night pojangmaka tucked beneath a highway overpass where plastic sheeting kept the cold out and a gas flame kept the broth hot. Liana wrapped both hands around a ceramic cup and watched steam rise while city noise pressed around them from every direction. Do-hyun sat across from her with his coat still on and said almost nothing for several minutes. She noticed. "You didn't have to come tonight," she said finally. Not an accusation. Just an observation, precise and quiet. "I wanted to see your photographs in the space," he said. She tilted her head slightly. "You saw them for all of 40 seconds before you came to stand beside me." The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. The territory just before one. "The photographs were good," he said. "But I'd already seen them." She set her cup down slowly. "When?" she asked. "You showed me some on your camera," he said. "At the café. I remembered the Marrakesh one." She studied him across the table. That quiet awareness she'd had since the first night, that quality of seeing without performance, turned on him fully now, and he held it without flinching because he had nothing to hide in this particular moment, which was a strange and disorienting sensation for a man who had spent years hiding everything. "The man I was speaking with," she said. "You know him?" "I know the type." "The type," she repeated. "Men who approach interesting women at events because interesting women make them feel less ordinary." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "And what type are you?" The question sat between them, direct and undeflectable. He considered lying. He was extraordinarily good at lying, had built entire empires partially on the foundation of strategic misdirection. But something about the way she asked it, without edge or manipulation, stripped that option away before he could reach for it. "A worse one," he said honestly. "Probably." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she picked up her cup again. "At least you're not pretending," she said. That night, standing outside while she waited for her car, he reached out and adjusted her scarf where it had slipped at the collar, not because it was dramatic or calculated, but because the wind was cold and the gesture happened before he decided to make it. Her breath caught slightly. He felt it even through the fabric between his fingers. He stepped back, said goodnight, watched her drive away, and stood on that street corner for longer than was necessary, doing nothing at all. 2 days later, the world rearranged itself. He was in a private meeting, the kind conducted in rooms that didn't appear in building directories, when his phone buzzed with a message from a contact who monitored certain social media channels for specific reasons. He glanced at it once. A photograph, posted to a financial commentary account with significant reach, taken at a charity dinner he'd attended 8 months earlier. His face, clearly recognizable, standing beside 2 men who occupied senior positions in one of Seoul's most heavily scrutinized criminal financial dynasties. The photograph itself proved nothing. The optics required no explanation. By the time he returned to his main office, his legal team had already begun containment protocol. He moved through those hours with the focused efficiency of someone who had managed crises before and understood that panic was a luxury that solved nothing. He made the necessary calls, redirected 3 pending deals, ensured the photograph's digital circulation was interrupted where interruption was possible. He did not think about Liana until nearly midnight. Then he thought about nothing else. She called him before he could call her. Her voice when he answered was different from any version he'd heard before. Not angry, not dramatic. Careful, in the way of someone who had spent hours arranging their thoughts and still wasn't certain the arrangement was right. "I need to ask you something," she said. "I know," he said. The silence that followed lasted almost 10 seconds. "Is it true?" she asked. He had options. He always had options. This was something power taught you before almost anything else, that every situation contained multiple exits and the skill was in choosing the right one with sufficient speed. He could reframe, contextualize, offer a version of truth that answered the question while leaving the most important parts obscured. Instead, he said, "Some of it." Another silence. "How much of it?" she asked. "Enough," he said, "that you have every reason to decide this is something you should walk away from." The line stayed open. He could hear her breathing. Outside his office window, Seoul continued at full speed, lights and traffic and the restless movement of a city that never fully stopped, and he sat completely still inside all of it, waiting for her to speak. "I'm not going to pretend I'm not frightened," she said finally. "I know. And I'm not going to pretend it doesn't change things. I know that too. But I want to see you," she said. Once more. To say this properly. In person. He was at her door in 20 minutes. She opened it wearing a plain white linen shirt and dark jeans, hair down, no jewelry, and she looked more beautiful than he had ever seen her, not in spite of the simplicity, but because of it, the way truth always looked different stripped of its context. She let him in. They sat on opposite sides of her apartment's small living room. She had made tea that neither of them touched. "I don't know what I was expecting," she said. "From you. From this. I think I knew something was different about you from the beginning, but I decided the person I was seeing was real." "He is real," Do-hyun said. "Both of them can be real," she said. "That's not the problem." "Then what is?" She looked at him. "Your world is heavy, Do-hyun. The kind of heavy that crushes things that come too close. And I have spent my entire adult life making sure nothing crushes me." He didn't argue with that. He had no right to argue with it. "I leave for Armenia in 6 days," she said. "I've had this trip planned for 4 months. I'm documenting monastery restoration work in the highlands. It's important to me." "I know," he said. Because he did know, she'd spoken about it 3 weeks earlier with the particular luminosity she reserved for things she truly loved. "I think," she said carefully, "that it might be better if I go and we let this be what it was. Something real for a short time." The words arrived precisely and without cruelty, which somehow made them worse. He looked at her from across the room, this woman who moved through the world with sincerity intact, who tipped street musicians and spent her afternoons with elderly craftsmen and documented beauty before it could disappear. And he felt something in his chest that he recognized, distantly, as the sensation preceding loss. "I'm asking you not to," he said. She blinked. "I'm not telling you. I'm not controlling you." He heard the difference in his own voice, something stripped down, something he hadn't used in years. "I'm asking. There's a difference." "I know there is," she said softly. "Then stay." He paused. "Or go to Armenia and come back. Come back to something that's still here." She was quiet for a very long time. "And what about everything attached to your name?" she asked finally. "That doesn't go away because we decide we want it to." "No," he said. "It doesn't. I'm not someone who can exist inside a world built on the things your world is built on." "I'm not asking you to exist inside it," he said. "I'm asking you to exist beside me." She touched his face then, raised one hand and pressed her palm against his jaw, and he went completely still beneath the contact, like something in him understood that this was a moment requiring absolute stillness. Her eyes moved across his face with that quiet, careful attention she gave to everything she considered worth preserving. "Some people change your life without staying in it forever," she whispered. Then she left for Armenia 6 days later, and the airport felt colder than any territory he had ever controlled. He returned to the penthouse alone. He sat at the window where he'd first watched the rain blur the city on the night she'd moved through the suite, like she respected spaces and the memories inside them, and he understood, with the clarity that only genuine loss produced, that something had broken open in him that was not going to close back. He went to work. He managed his empire with the controlled precision his reputation required. He completed 3 major acquisitions, resolved 2 internal loyalty issues, and sat through 40 hours of meetings across the following 2 weeks without revealing, through any readable expression, that anything in his life had changed. Then she called. Not a message. A call. From a mountainside in Armenia where the signal kept dropping and reforming, and her voice came through in fragments that he assembled like someone reconstructing something precious from scattered pieces. She'd found an old monastery, she said. 12th century. The restoration team was working on frescoes that had been damaged by water intrusion. The colors were extraordinary even through the damage, ochre and cobalt, and a particular red that the restorers said hadn't been replicated since the original pigment source was lost in the 17th century. "I thought about calling you as soon as I found it," she said, "before I even took a photograph." He was standing in the middle of his office in a $3,000 coat, and he said nothing because nothing was required. He just listened to her voice coming through damaged signal from a mountain in a country neither of them had been born in, and something in him that had been very tightly wound for a very long time began, slowly, to release. They talked for 2 hours. It became a pattern. Late nights for him, early mornings for her, the time difference between Seoul and Yerevan making every call feel slightly dreamlike, like conversations happening in the hour before the world fully woke. She showed him things through video sometimes, the fog sitting heavy in mountain valleys, ancient stones fitted together without mortar, an elderly woman at a roadside market selling dried herbs from a wooden cart. He showed her Seoul at midnight from his office window, the river lit from below, the skyline pressing upward against a low, dark sky. "It's strange," she said one night, "how much a city can feel like someone." He didn't ask her to elaborate. He understood. 3 weeks after she'd left, he received information from a source he trusted absolutely, a rival faction within the financial syndicate he operated alongside had identified Liana. Not specifically as someone important to him, his emotional life was so aggressively concealed that very few people would have known to look, but as a loose thread. A foreign woman with significant access to documentation and photography equipment who had spent considerable time in proximity to someone connected to their organization. The threat assessment his security team produced was measured and professional. Do-hyun read it once, set it down, and made 4 calls. The first reorganized 3 layers of his protective infrastructure in ways that redirected attention. The second arranged private security for Liana in Yerevan without her knowledge, discreet, professional, completely invisible to her daily movement. The third was to illegal contact in 3 countries simultaneously. The fourth was more complicated, requiring a conversation he had been delaying for over a year with someone who had significant leverage over the faction's behavior. He did not tell Liana any of this. He told her on their next call that he'd eaten properly that day, because he'd remembered what his mother had written in the margins of the book she had read by accident and returned with unexpected tenderness, and it had seemed like the kind of thing worth mentioning. She was quiet for a moment after he said it. Then, good. Just that word. Soft and unhurried and full of something that did not require further translation. He went to Armenia 17 days later. No announcement. No advance notice. He booked a direct flight, arranged his own car from the airport, and arrived in Yerevan on a Tuesday morning when the sky was the particular pale blue that high altitude produced and the air smelled different from anywhere in South Korea, colder, drier, carrying traces of wood smoke and mineral stone. He texted her when he landed. 3 words. "I'm in Yerevan." Her response took 4 minutes. Then, "Where are you exactly?" He told her. She arrived 20 minutes later in a worn field jacket and dusty boots, natural hair pulled back, camera bag over one shoulder, and when she saw him standing outside the small café he'd found near the old city quarter, she stopped completely, just stopped, on the pavement, 10 feet away, and looked at him with an expression that moved through surprise and something softer, and then something that she seemed to consciously decide not to conceal. She crossed the distance. "You came," she said. "I told you something was still here," he said. "I wanted to show you." She looked at him for a long time with that quiet, deliberate attention she gave to things she considered worth preserving. Then she reached out and took his hand. Not dramatically. Not as a conclusion. As a beginning. The particular beginning that happened when 2 people who had been moving toward each other through considerable difficulty finally closed the remaining space between them and decided, simply and completely, to stop running. He held her hand on a street in Yerevan while mountain air moved around them and a city neither of them had been born and carried on at its own pace, unhurried and ancient and entirely indifferent to the specific gravity of what was happening between 2 people on its pavement. That evening, she showed him the monastery. 12th century walls. Frescoes and colors that defied the damage done to them, ochre and cobalt, and that particular red she described over broken signal from a mountainside 3 weeks earlier. He stood in front of one fresco for a long time without speaking, and she stood beside him without requiring him to speak, and the silence between them was the kind of silence that belonged to people who had learned each other's rhythms well enough to breathe inside them. Outside, fog was beginning to settle into the valley below. "This is what you're preserving," he said finally. "Trying to," she said. "Before it disappears." He looked at her. The light inside the monastery was amber and ancient, and it caught her face the way good light caught things worth being caught by good light. "I don't want to disappear from your life," he said. She turned to look at him. That awareness in her eyes, steady, unafraid, fully present. "Then don't," she said. Simple. Completely unadorned. The way she offered everything without performance, without strategy, without anything except sincerity. He pulled her against him slowly, giving her every opportunity to redirect the moment, and when she didn't, when she came forward instead and pressed her face against his chest, and he felt her exhale slowly, completely. Like someone setting something heavy down after carrying it for a long time, he held her inside a 12th century Armenian monastery while fog swallowed the valley outside, and understood, with the particular clarity that came from surviving something you hadn't been certain. You would survive. That power had never been what he'd built it to be. This was a woman who returned a book because she understood it mattered, who spoke about cities at midnight, who tipped street musicians and photographed things before they disappeared and crossed the distance between them on a Yerevan pavement without requiring a speech or a promise, just presence. He pressed his lips to the top of her head. She tightened her arms around him once, briefly, fiercely. Outside, Seoul waited, the empire, the reputation, the weight of everything his name carried. It would all still be there. Some of it would need to change. He knew that, had begun the quiet work of knowing it. There were parts of the world he had built that he was going to have to unmake, not for her. She had never asked him to. But because the man who could hold someone with this kind of sincerity could not simultaneously be the man who controlled things through fear and never questioned the cost. She had not changed him. She had simply revealed what had always been underneath the armor. And standing in ancient amber light with her in his arms and fog taking the valley outside and the silence between them full of everything that did not require words, he was finally, genuinely, entirely present. Not performing control, not managing distance, just there. You made it to the end, and that means you're truly part of the Sonnet Love Stories family. Thank you for your support. Like the video, drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be replying as always, and stay subscribed because the next story is already waiting for you.